All right, students, this is chapter 4. This is your video to help guide you a little bit through chapter 4. I'm not going to baby you when it comes to PACT. I know you all have experienced, most of you have experienced this, and if you haven't, you're probably catching on to it. Purpose, audience, conventions, trouble spots. Just read those yourself and you'll figure out, how they can help you. Make sure you do read them though so you can understand what you need to, what kinds of things you need to consider. The biggest thing that you're going to be looking at is going to be the guidelines, the midterm guidelines. So notice here that there are two places that you can find the helpful information about the goals and stuff, right? The goals that you're going to be going over are the goals are, I forget what page they're on, but they're back in the Roman numerals. So if you go back to the Roman numeral pages, you will be able to find those. Let's see. Maybe I can get lucky and get close to it if I go back here. What do you say? What do you think about that? Page IX 9, page 9. Here's your course goals. So there's the goals. Basically, just remember that you want to look at these goals, and you want to make sure you understand what the goals are, and then you're going to just talk about how you've been reaching those goals, how you've been working toward reaching those goals, right? And developing yourself in these areas. So that's something that you will want to take a look at. And also, while I'm back here, there is the let's see, I'm not sure what way to go here for this one. Yes, here it is. So don't forget that you have at midterm, you'll want to be thinking about your participation. Have you been participating? In other words, have you been showing up, so to speak, every week and doing the work and participating with the whole class activities and discussions and stuff, right? You want to make sure you're doing that. And this is kind of a guide for a rubric to tell you how, what will be excellent versus what will be solid or good versus all the way down here unacceptable, right? You can kind of think of these as A, B, C, D, if you want to, even F. A is excellent, solid B, competent C, D, and then F being, of course, unacceptable. That is for participation. Remember, participation is 10% of your overall grade. The exercises, remember the writing exercises, when I do this based on everything that you turn in. So it's not just the exercises, but it's every time you see a 1 or a 0 in that grade book, that's falls under this. Now, it also falls a little bit under the participation, right? Because if you're not doing the work, you're not participating. So those two things go together, and this is 20%. So basically, all of that is 30% of your overall grade. Then you have a rubric for the that breaks down all of the major elements in the actual portfolio itself and how, what's great versus what is barely passed, right? So you want to take a look at these and see if you're doing these things, right? Try to make sure you touch on all these things and are covering these things as you work through the semester, right? And so those are your goals, and those are the rubric for how you're doing in the class. There's also at the very end of the book, there's also a that does not exist. Back. Okay. Okay. Let me. I don't know if I can get to the back cover. Yeah. So inside back cover. In the very back of your book, you also have a brief breakdown of that portfolio rubric. Now, this is just a much more brief version of it that you could maybe use to look at it as a glance. But I would say for the midterm, you ought to rely on the one in the Roman numeral pages. Okay. So let's go back to, I think it was page 47. And yes, the assessment. All right, so that's what these are talking about here. Your final portfolio is 70%, so that's the majority of your grade. That's why it's so important to try to do that really well. Your due date for this assignment is not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday, the 28th. So you have 2 weeks. You'll be working on this for 2 weeks. Okay. Let's see what else it provides here. I apologize for all my clearing my throat and stuff. Kind of stuffy for some reason. All right, tips and tricks for the midterm reflection. Read these, use these as you will, right? There's a writing activity here that you can use for your, I think it's something you could use for your miscellaneous item. If I remember correctly, I think you can do that for the miscellaneous item. This is something that you can use if you want to, but and it'll help break down those different goals. So you could think about how those are working for you so far, even if it's just in project one. You could maybe talk about the writing exercises you already did, and put that in here, the source evaluation, right? So you could talk about those two things, and then your midterm reflection plan itself. So you could do that if you wanted to as a miscellaneous item. Here's a writing exercise that you could do. Now this is your revision plan. Your revision plan itself is the plan where you're going to talk about how much time you spent working on the projects, how much, what work have you done, what feedback have you received, how have you fixed things based on that received feedback, that kind of stuff like that, right? So you'll want to do that. Now this same exact plan is also in the document that we're going to look at here in the next video. So you'll see it's going to be the exact same page. All right. Peer review at midterm. I don't know if we're going to do a peer review. I can't remember if we're going to be doing a peer review or not. We may or may not. I can't remember off the top of my head if we have that scheduled for next week or not. But if we do, you'll receive instructions how to do it. If not, don't worry about it. Midterm evaluation. So here is the midterm evaluation. This is this is something I would really appreciate for you to do. It could even be your miscellaneous item. This is where you can give me some feedback about what you've liked and what's working for you and what's not working so well in this class. So this is basically something that you could do for me to help me understand what's working well and maybe what's not working so well. So this would be a great thing to do for your either separately or as your miscellaneous items, so that I can see how things are going for you, right? And it's 2 pages long, just 5 questions, and then additional space if you need it, so that you can handwrite this and snap a picture of it, or you could type it, however you want to do it, and then just submit it as your miscellaneous item would be fine. Let's see. Now, if you do that, it would be great if you submit it to me as along with your midterm reflection. That way I'll see it now instead of having to wait until the end of the semester to see it, right? I'm sure that makes sense, right? Now, here's the other half of the major work for the midterm. This is the reflection guide. So the reflection guide is where this is what you're going to use to talk about your progress and how you've done. The purpose, this first half is just the purpose of doing the reflection. This is the part you really want to consider, because this is what you should be thinking about and asking yourself, and this is what you'll be using to complete it. So you're going to basically talk about, what tone do you want to set, what do you want your reader to know and understand about your growth and your plan and your work and stuff like that, and progress, and so on. So this is one of the things you'll be using to actually create and write your midterm reflection and revision plan. This is the reflection. The revision plan is what we looked at back on a few pages back, right? So those are the things that you will be doing. Here's some suggested readings Again, I have had a student in the past, just last semester or the semester before that, read one of these, or read some of it. He might not have read the entire thing, but read some of it, and then he just did some notes about it, or wrote a brief synopsis of it, or something like that, and he turned that in as a miscellaneous item, and that would be perfectly fine. You could do that if you want, but you wouldn't have to. Of course, you could do that, but you wouldn't have to. And then there's some information here in the conclusion, just to wrap the whole thing up. Now, if any of these things that I have talked about as being available for the miscellaneous items, if I come across in my next video about any of those actually being ones we're using, then you may not, that might eliminate one of them. But I think most of those, if not all of them, are available for miscellaneous items. All right, so look for the next video. The next video is going to be all about going over the actual plan itself, which is a separate document, but it contains those same 2 pages that I just went over from back through here, the midterm reflection and the other revision plan pages. It's the exact same information on a document, a separate document. So look for that video, and that will do it for this video.